Okay, so today we are talking about cold calling or how to get through the front door. And as I say, I think it is one of the hardest things that a salesperson has to do, um, simply because you are approaching a stranger and you're asking for their time, and they have no idea why they should give you that time, and therefore they are reluctant to do that. Um, so I think it's much harder than closing or anything else. I think it's probably the hardest thing that you have to do. So before we start, I am going to show you what I think is a perfect example. And it comes from the movie The Shawshank Redemption, which, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's about an accountant who is wrongly convicted of murdering his wife. And in the scene that we're going to see, he and a group of other convicts are spreading tar on the roof of a building, and the head of the prison guards is talking about an inheritance that he's just received. You should have, if you've not seen it, the prison guards are particularly violent thugs, and so he's a particularly nasty person, and you will see. So the approach comes from the main character, the convicted accountant, played by Tim Robbins, and you'll see how he approaches him and what he says and the reaction, and hopefully you will appreciate how it works.
Off years ago, figured him for dead anyway. So anyway, this. Ran off years ago, figured him for dead anyway. So anyway, this lawyer fella says to me, his brother died a rich man, oil wells and shit, close to $1 million.
$1 million?
Yeah. Fucking incredible how lucky some assholes get.
Jeez Louise, you gonna see any of that?
35,000. That's what he left me.
Dollars?
Yep.
Holy shit, that's great. That's like winning the sweepstakes. Isn't it?
Dumb shit, what do you think the government's gonna do to me? Take a big wet bite out of my ass is what?
Poor Barry. Terrible fucking luck, huh?
Crying shame. Some people really got it awful. Andy, you nuts. Keep your eyes on your mouth, man. Andy.
Well, all right, you're gonna pay some taxes, but you'll still end up with...
Oh, yeah. Maybe enough to buy a new car, and then what? I gotta pay tax on the car. Repair, maintenance, goddamn kids pestering you to take them for a ride all the time. Then at the end of the year, you figure the tax wrong, you gotta pay them out of your own pocket. I tell you, Uncle Sam, he puts his hand in your shirt and squeezes your tit till it's purple. The man never gets a break, that's the truth. You said rich kid
Yourself killed. Keep talking.
No.
Some brother. Shit.
Hey!
Mr. Hadley, do you trust your wife?
Oh, that's funny. You're gonna look funnier sucking my dick with no teeth.
What I mean is, do you think she'd go behind your back, try to hamstring you?
That's it. Step aside, Mert. This fucker's having himself an accident.
You don't push him off the roof. Because if you do trust her, there's no reason you can't keep that 35,000.
What did you say?
35,000.
35,000?
All of it.
All of it?
Every penny.
You better start making sense.
If you want to keep all that money, give it to your wife. The IRS allows a one-time only gift to your spouse for up to $60,000.
Bullshit. Tax-free?
Tax-free. IRS can't touch 1 cent.
You're that smart banker what killed his wife, aren't you? Why should I believe a smart banker like you? So I can end up in here with you?
It's perfectly legal. Go ask the IRS. They'll say the same thing. Actually, I feel stupid telling you this. I'm sure you would have investigated the matter yourself.
Yeah, fucking A. I don't need no smart wife-killing banker to tell me where the bear's shitting the buckwheat.
Of course not. But you do need someone to set up the tax-free gift for you. And that'll cost you. A lawyer, for example.
Bunch of ball-washing bastards.
Right. I suppose I could set it up for you. That would save you some money. You get the forms, I'll prepare them for you. Nearly free of charge. I'd only ask 3 beers apiece for each of my co-workers.
Co-workers, get him. That's rich, ain't it?
I think a man working outdoors feels more like a man if you can have a bottle of suds. It's only my opinion. Sir.
What are you Jimmy staring at? Back to work!
Let's go, work.
And that's how it came to pass, that on the second to last day of the job, the convict crew that tarred the plate factory roof in the spring of '49 wound up sitting in a row at 10 o'clock in the morning, drinking icy cold Bohemia-style beer, courtesy of the hardest screw that ever walked a turn at Shawshank State Prison.
Drink up while it's cold, ladies.
The colossal prick even managed to sound magnanimous. We sat and drank with the sun on our shoulders and felt like free men. Hell, we could have been tarring the roof of one of our own houses.
Right, I'm going to stop that there. It just
No, carry on. I want to watch it now. I'm going. I'll see you later.
You scared me there, John. Yeah, no, it's if anyone hasn't seen the film, it's a brilliant film. But Tim Robbins comes up and he tells the prison guard something he doesn't know, and he explains the impact on him. Now, I don't suggest that you start by approaching your customers by saying, "Do you trust your wife?" That's quite a provocative opening statement, but it is nevertheless a perfect cold call. So let's look at it in a little bit more detail. So why is cold calling important, right? So lots of people will accept calls from salespeople. In fact, they probably prefer that they call them potentially to emailing them, right? So there's a study that suggested that about 70% of buyers will accept a call from new salespeople. People can't avoid answering questions when they're on the phone. So if you call people up, you can very quickly qualify them as to whether they're a potential customer or not. So I once had a call from somebody who was an office interior designer. And her first question to me was, "Do you have an office or do you work from home?" And I said, "I work from home." And she said, "Oh, in that case, there's absolutely nothing I can do for you. Thanks very much." And she put the phone down. And I was almost disappointed by that, because I thought she'd started so well in a sales call that I actually wanted her to carry on trying to sell to me, because she qualified me out immediately, right? The other story that I have around this is my friend who spent 15 minutes on the phone to a conservatory salesman who never once asked where she lived till the very end. So he'd spent 15 minutes on the phone to her, then asked her where she lived, and she told him she lived in the second floor flat. All right, so clearly a conservatory was of no use to her whatsoever. So it's incredibly powerful way of qualifying potential customers if you can talk to them. So it is undoubtedly the best way of doing it, and the most effective way of approaching a new customer. However, it is difficult, right? Lots of people don't answer their phones. You are asking somebody for their time and they're generally busy. And so you've got to pose the questions in the right way to get them to talk to you. You're obviously approaching a stranger, right? And from the very time that we're born, we're told don't talk to strangers, right? So it's difficult, right? We're not absolutely certain that we can help the customer. We've probably still got a lot of questions that we need to ask to determine whether we can or not. And so we are somewhat defensive quite often when we call people. And of course, no one likes to be rejected. So there's a chance that your customer is just going to turn around and put the phone down on you or shorten the call as much as they possibly can, which isn't easy for anybody to accept. So it is a difficult thing to do. Okay. So when we do it, right, we have to think, what are we trying to do, right? We are absolutely not trying to sell our product in the cold call, right? Our sole objective in that cold call is to get a longer meeting with the client, right? If you think about the whole sales process, every step in the sales process, we are wanting to sell the next step of the process. We don't try and sell our products till we get to the proposal stage, right? So our objective in our cold call is purely to get the first meeting, right? However, you can't just ask for a meeting out of that, straight off the bat, because the customer has no idea why it's going to be useful to them, and so they're not prepared to give up their time in order to give you that. Okay, so before you can explain why a meeting is useful, you actually have to explain why the client should even take your call. So why should they even listen to you for 2 minutes asking for a meeting? So whereas every stage in the sales process, we're looking for to sell the next thing, or the next stage in the process, in the cold call, we actually have 2 things that we have to sell. We have to sell the call itself, and then we have to sell the meeting. But it's really important that you sell the call first, so that the customer understands why it's even worth talking to you, right? Obviously, if you're phoning people that you know, they will generally give you time. Strangers need to understand why they should give up their time to talk to you. Chances are they're going to be busy in their day. You don't know what they're doing at the time that they answer the phone. So they have to understand why it's worth spending some time talking to you. So the first thing you have to do is to grab their attention, so that at least they will listen to see whether they would be interested in it. And you then have to demonstrate why it's going to be worthwhile for them to go further. Okay. So there are therefore 2 parts to a cold call, right? The introduction, or please don't put the phone down, right, as I call it. So about 30 seconds to say, here's who I am and here's how I can help you, right? And hopefully that is sufficient for the customer to say, okay, that's fine, carry on, right? And then here's why we should arrange to meet, right? And I would suggest that your introduction is no more than 30 seconds, and your second part is probably no more than 2 minutes. Because roughly after that, I think people start, if they're really busy, they're not prepared to give you much more than that. Even if they'll arrange another time, right? You've got about 2 minutes to justify why you should go further. Okay. So your introduction, you need to tell the other person what you do, who you work for, and who you are, right? It's just the polite thing to do, right? You can't just launch into a script or launch into what you're going to say without telling them who you are, right? And then in a very general way, you tell them what you do, right? And your only objective here is to get them to talk, get their permission for you to talk longer, right? It's all you're trying to do. So you're trying to tell them something that makes them think this person's worth talking to for a little bit longer, okay? So for example, you might say, my name's John Smith, I work for Acme Insurance, and we help companies to save thousands of pounds on their insurance needs. So that should be, you would hope, sufficient for people to say, okay, I'm prepared to listen. I know what you do. I know I buy insurance, and you may be able to help me, okay? Now, if we take that example a little bit further, your initial thought might be, well, I've got lots of insurance, right? I already have insurance. Now you're going to tell me I can save money, so that's great, but I already know that I have insurance. So I have to, in order for you to then make any progress, you have to effectively overcome people's resistance to change. So the fact that somebody already has insurance, it's bought through a broker or bought through someone that they know or whatever, you've got to, in order for you to be successful, you've got to ask them for change. And we naturally have a status quo bias. We naturally want things to stay as they are. And so we have a tendency to then keep doing the things that we like, okay? So to be successful, we have to overcome preference stability, the tendency of people to like the things that they currently understand, right? So when people think about a question or a problem that they've got, they very quickly form an opinion as to how they're going to go about solving it, right? As a result, if anyone provides other information, you immediately reject it because it doesn't fit with your opinion, okay? So we have a tendency to go, I understand this is what I want to do. Here's how I'm going to go and do it. everything else doesn't really fit. Okay, so in order for you to get them to think differently, right, we have to try and give them information that they don't yet know. Okay, so something that changes how they view their problem or how they choose the range of options they have to be able to solve it. So you generally don't persuade somebody to change by telling them things they already know. You have to tell them information that they don't already know. Okay, so what are we going to tell them? Okay, now there's a whole range of things that we can tell them, and we don't necessarily know that they don't know it, right? If it's a generally known fact, the chances are they probably know it, and it's probably not worth telling them. But there are going to be things that you know that generally you can guess that they don't, right? So possibly primary research data relevant to their business. Okay, so yesterday I was at a trade show and there was a guy there who had temperature measurers for people. So you stand in front of the scanner, it measures the temperature of your forehead, and you can therefore tell whether a person has a fever or not. And it's obviously very relevant with people going back to the office after COVID. He was telling me there's very little data around people's temperature and their prevalence to having fevers or whatever. Even though we all know that generally if you have a fever, you have a raised temperature, there's not an awful lot of data that's around. So they're providing these scanners into exhibitions and such like purely as much to get data as it is to get sales out of it. But once they have that data, they can then go to companies and say, did you know this, that, and the next thing related to this data that's relevant to their business? So anything that you've got that's research-based is obviously really useful because, again, you've got that data that nobody else has, okay? Insight into how your products help to solve business problems. I mean, that's obviously that you will have that nothing else will. Best practice methodology based on your expertise, or things that you have done potentially for your potential customers' competitors. So if you've done a great project with someone else that does a similar sort of thing, then you can say, did you know that we've been able to do this, that, and the next thing for them? And again, that's new information to them, right? Unconsidered needs, things that they might not have thought about, missed opportunities and such like. As much as you can, you want to try and customize what you're telling them to their specific information and their specific situation. Now, you can't always be certain or that you can get it as customized as 100%, but the more you can get it relevant to that person, then the better it's obviously going to be, because it's going to resonate more with them. Okay. Now, just telling somebody something that they don't know is not sufficient. You have to explain what impact that information is going to have on them. All right. The information itself does not change the mind. It's what the impact on their business is or their life is going to be, right? So why do I care about this information? Okay, so you've got them thinking differently, but they've got to understand the impact that it has on them, right? So what are the consequences of this new information, whether it's good or bad, right? And both can be effective at getting people to change. In fact, the pain of losing is quite often more powerful than the pleasure of gaining, right? So avoiding a potential loss can actually be a greater motivator than gaining something. So if you're saying to your customer, if you don't do this, this is what could happen, then that's a greater motivator than just going, life is going to be even better than it is today. Okay. So one of the great ones in this area is where people are have liabilities if they don't do things. So particularly around regulations and particularly around health and safety regulations. So, if you don't have the right number of trained first aiders, such like and particularly if you don't have any first aiders around in your business premises, you can be liable for an unlimited fine. Okay. Now, nobody likes fines. Unlimited fines are even worse, right? So that's a potential loss that it motivates an awful lot of people to actually make sure that they do the right thing. Okay. So always take the information that you've got and translate it into what does it matter to the customer? How is it going to make a difference to them? Okay. And that is what makes people change their minds once they understand the impact of things. Okay. So our cold call is essentially built from a framework, not a script. You might want to think about what it is that you're going to go and say, but if you write a script, it is going to sound like a script, and therefore you're going to struggle if the customer doesn't respond in exactly the way that you would like them to. And that's almost certainly going to happen because no customer ever responds the way you expect them to. Okay, so we develop a framework for the conversation, right? And it starts with our introduction, where you say, here's who I am and here's how I help people. At that point, ask for permission to carry on, right? Are you free for a couple of minutes? If they're not, ask for a time that's convenient for you to call back. If they do say, yes, they're free, then it tells you that you've got at least a little bit of a chance of going further, that they are prepared to carry on. If they're not interested at all, they'll tell you at this point, and you can move on, okay? But always ask for permission to carry on. It's the worst thing you can do is just to launch into what you want to say without asking for permission, okay? So then we're going to tell them something that they might not have thought about, right? Obviously, it's going to be different for every business and every customer that you're going to talk to. Here's something you might not have thought about. Ask them if you think that that's going to have an impact on their business. How do you think that might impact your business, right? Here's how I think it might impact your business, right? Or you, right? How's that going to, how do you think that's going to be relevant to you, right? Here's an idea of how I might be able to help you. And then you can ask for a meeting for a longer time to be able to discuss it, right? Hopefully you get a positive response to that, and you can agree a time, right? As I say, you are not at any point in this trying to sell your product or your service. All you're trying to do is to get to that meeting where you can discuss what the customer is trying to do and whether you can help them, okay? So, any questions up to this point?
Yeah, just to, if that would also apply to, I don't know if you can say that, cold emailing as well.
Okay, so I'm going to come on to emails.
Okay.
Okay. So it's pretty much exactly the same. All right. Obviously, you don't have the chance to ask for that, whether they're free and those sorts of things. But essentially, the structure of what you ask for is the same. Okay. So obviously, there's a fair chance that the customer isn't going to answer the phone. If I generally think if I make 10 calls out to people and I get 2 or 3 responses, I think I'm doing quite well. Sometimes I'll, if I make 2 calls and 2 people answer, I just stop then because I think just wasting my time if I actually bother calling anyone else, because the chances are they're not going to answer. But every phone obviously now has the chance to leave a voicemail. I would recommend that the first time you call somebody, you leave a voicemail, right? Otherwise, you've just got a call, you've got a missed call on your phone and you don't know what it was about, right? Which basically says it's not important. Well, whoever it is that's called doesn't think it's important. So I would always leave a message the first time. Thereafter, I wouldn't. But certainly leave a message the first time, okay? So the fact that so many calls are going to go to voicemail, you need to think in advance, what is it that you're going to say when you leave the voicemail? And I would recommend that it's no longer than 30 seconds. No one wants to listen for longer than that, I don't think. And the content should essentially summarize your framework, okay? So your very short introduction, an unconsidered need, and a statement of how it impacts them and how you can help. Okay. And finally say that you'll call back. Everyone's voicemail message says, leave a message and I'll call you back. My experience is no one ever does. So I would always tell them that you're going to call back. Okay. So many years ago, I worked for a software company called Paradigm. And I left this message for people when I was for a senior executive in an oil company. And I said, hi, John, this is Tim Gibbons from Paradigm. Your company is the only major oil company in Aberdeen that doesn't have any Paradigm products in use. So I'd like to talk to you about how to discuss how Paradigm can help you with your work. Okay. So obviously he was never, ever going to know that they were the only company that didn't use our products. So I could tell him that, and that's something that he therefore didn't know. And it was intriguing enough for him to call me back, right? He, as I say, these people never tend to call you back. He was intrigued enough by that message to call me back, okay? So I didn't even have to tell him how I could help him. I didn't have to tell him any downsides of not using us or any of those things. There was just that fear that he was potentially missing out on things that he didn't know about that could have helped him, okay? So it doesn't have to be always as specific as I've said, but you need to make people think differently and get them to say, I need to talk to this person, okay? So as we said, email is an alternative to doing all of that. It's not as great as cold calling because it can easily be ignored. However, you do know it's being delivered and it can be effective, okay? So a lot of people prefer that you contact them by email. It can be quite often useful to contact people by email and then follow up with a phone call, simply because the email makes the phone call not quite as cold as it would have been if they've never heard from you before, okay? Try to make it, again, as personalized as possible. If you send the same message to everybody, it's probably not as effective. Now, having said that, can you personalize every single message in a way that resonates with absolutely everybody differently? Probably not. A lot of the text will probably be the same, but if you can personalize it, that would be great. Most people will tend to respond after a while to people's emails and such like. And again, the content is roughly the same as your voicemail. Not too long. It can be a little bit longer, I think, than the voicemail, and certainly long enough to get over the messages that you need to get over, right? Focused on the outcome for the customer. Why is it that this is worth reading? What is the impact going to be on you if you don't do anything about this, right? So you always think about what it is that you're going to do, okay? Now, I have been sent many emails over the last 6 or 7 years of running my own business where people have tried to persuade me to buy something. And after a while, I started keeping them as examples of what to do or maybe not what to do or what not to do in doing it. So I'm going to just go through a few examples and you can tell me whether you think they are good or bad based on what we've said so far, okay? So here's the first one. Hi, Tim, Izzy here, manager at a Crew Workplaces in Cobham. So that's a place not far from where I live. Helping businesses and professionals locally with COVID-19 safe office space, desk space, and meeting rooms on monthly rolling contracts. Can I send you our available offers? So do we think that's any good or not so good? Anyone?
I think it gets quite pushy towards the end. It doesn't drive towards a meeting. It's very one way. You like?
Yeah, it certainly is. So there's no attempt made to sort of suggest why I should be interested other than the fact that they're COVID-19 safe, okay? So in my opinion, not very good. Certainly not that good when 2 weeks later, I get a almost identical email from, I should point out I've changed all the names in these, from Mabel, who's the building assistant at the same place. basically telling me exactly the same thing. Okay, so it basically says the company has no idea what each person is doing and such like. Okay, all right. So next one. Hi Tim, we've produced a report outlining why businesses are looking to the finance department to lead digital transformation. After some fantastic feedback from the C-level community, I thought this topic would be of interest. Shall I send you a copy? Any thoughts on that one?
There's no introduction, is there? It hasn't said who he's from, what the company is, or anything of that nature.
No, I've got no idea. Now, I am intrigued by the fact that the finance department would be leading digital transformation, because I wouldn't expect that, I have to say. But just saying, oh, someone said it's good, meaning translating into this being of interest for me, not really. I think you've got to give me something more. Now, he's offering to send me something for free, right? So, fair enough. But even something for free, it's not really for free, because he wants to engage with you and he wants to try and sell you stuff. So the reality is that I don't think it's great. Okay. So the next one's a little bit longer. So I will, it was a LinkedIn connection request, and I'll shorten it slightly. So I believe one of the services we offer may be of interest to you. You may not be aware that as a director of a limited company, you can pay for your life insurance cover through your business and have all that deducted from corporation tax, which means that you can save money, right? On average, we save our clients around 50%. Whether you currently got cover or it's something you're thinking about doing, I'd love a couple of minutes of your time to explain how it works. Any thoughts around that one?
Well, it's very soft, easy, and it's obviously, I think he's accepted the connection request anyway. So he's always kind of, he can already do it, can't he? He's allowed.
Oh no, so he sent me the connection request and I accepted it.
Yeah.
And then he followed up with this, right?
Right, that's what I meant.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I went back to him and I said, yeah, I am interested, because I had no idea that my life insurance could be put through the business and it could save me money. Okay. I didn't know about it. So he told me something that I didn't know. He told me that he could say he generally saves his customers around 50%. And so, yeah, I went back and I had a call with him. Now, it never went further than that for various reasons, but he told me something that I didn't know. He told me what the impact of it would be, and he asked for my time, right? So that actually was a really good one. So here's the last one. So this was actually a follow-up email to the first one. This was the first email that I ever saved. And I kind of regretted not saving the first one that I got. So he says, hello, Tim. I emailed you recently about the possibility of a meeting to chat about your future exit plans for your company. Our research and transaction teams have highlighted your business as one of the most saleable in your marketplace. So I'd really like to talk to you. If you'd like to just talk over a coffee, I'll arrange for that as well. So any thoughts on that one?
A bit of a high risk strategy, because does he know that you actually have future exit plans or anything?
Yeah. So I look at it and I go, well, I am my company, right? My company is just me. And at the time he emailed me, I had no products, no intellectual property. The only thing that was sellable was me, right? So I don't believe that anyone would think that my business was eminently saleable, right? The other thing was he was based in Manchester, which is a 4-hour drive at the best of times from where I live, right? So he was offering to come for a coffee on an 8-hour round trip, right? So that said, he had no idea who I was or what I did, and therefore I didn't believe anything that he was saying. So I didn't follow up with that one, okay? So few examples there to give you an idea of what's possible. Okay, so just to finish off then, right, the thing about obviously when you phone somebody and you get to speak to them, you can immediately qualify them. If you are sending emails and leaving voice messages and such like, it may take a lot longer to get connections. Okay, So how long does it take, right? So to go from a prospect to a meeting, okay, so we send them a first contact, okay, we may not get a response. We send them a second contact, and most or half the people will give up at that point. 65% will have given up after contact 3, 80% after contact 4, 90% after contact 5. The reality is it takes between 7 and 9 connections in order for people to respond. Okay, so don't give up after 1 or 2. If you definitely believe that you have got something that is going to work for your customer, keep going, keep giving them the information, rephrase it each time, add some, extra information, or add some more proofs that you can do it, do what you say you're going to do. If you've got case studies, you can send those. Continue to feed them information, right? And, if you've gone through 10 contacts and you still haven't got a response, then you might give up then. But keep going through 6, 7, 8, and 9 if you can, because it does take a while to get there. Okay, so that's it. Any questions or comments from anyone?
Tim, what about the issue of getting through the receptionist barrier? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because that is often where everything falls down before you've even started.
It can be. It depends how calls are being screened and what have you. I have no qualms if somebody says, "Are they expecting your call?" to say yes. So particularly if you've sent them an email. So at the end of your email, I would always suggest that you're going to give them a call to say that you're kind of not going to get away with it. So then if a receptionist says, "Are they expecting your call?" you can quite honestly say yes, because you've told them to expect your call. If they ask you, "Oh, what's it about?" and try and fob you off with, "Oh, send us an email," or whatever, it's much more difficult in that instance. If they are sort of particularly difficult in doing that. I think certainly with larger companies, receptionists tend to be purely an answering phone service and will put you through. But it's if you get through to assistants that it's much more difficult. In which case, I would probably tend to revert to email and such like.
It's quite good though, isn't it, Tim, that we're now getting back out again and conferences and things. So
yes,
so that means that when you meet people and you take their business cards, you can have that initial chat and say, "Oh, I might contact you. I will contact you," and then at least you can say, to the receptionist, "Oh yeah, we met at," and we promised to make contact.
Yes,
so.
yeah. So that that's been part of the difficulty over the last 2 years, is that nobody's been in an office. So unless you had a mobile phone number for them, you absolutely couldn't get hold of them because nobody was in the office to answer the phone. So email was the only solution that you had at that point. So that is very difficult. But yes, if you've met somebody out, you've got every right to say, "Yeah, I'm continuing the conversation that we had," or whatever. And again, it's telling the receptionists business related stuff and the impact that it's going to have is quite difficult, because the chances are it may not have the impact on them that it would do on the person that you're talking to. In which case I'd be inclined to say, I'd like to talk to them about how I can save them millions of dollars in their business, or whatever it is that you do, because that would be pretty hard for them to say no to in that instance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, I'm interested about the approach that you had from, or via LinkedIn rather, because about 3 months or so ago, there was a study on LinkedIn, or a poll on LinkedIn, asking how people felt immediately after a connection request, when people immediately started trying to sell to them. In that instance, had they already kind of done a quasi introduction to you when they sent you the connection request to try to sort of soften that, or was it just a bare button press and then
no, so
marketing sale?
So I got a connection request. I can't remember whether there was any text with it. And then that email came straight afterwards. Now, there's an awful lot of automated stuff going on with those things. And you can generally tell when that happens because, you know, you get messages at 4:15 in the morning. And you kind of think, well, I don't believe people are sending LinkedIn messages at 4:15 in the morning. Or, you know, once you've connected, you immediately get, you know, a sales pitch. I think if it's a good sales pitch, people don't mind. I think it's when it's a bad sales pitch that people mind. But having said that, I don't tend to pitch to people as soon as I've connected with them. I will, you know, hopefully, you know, check out who they are. Hopefully they check out who I am. I might, you know, hopefully they will see stuff that I post. As a result, you know, if you're posting every day, they will almost certainly see something that you've posted once they've connected with you. So even if they don't acknowledge it or whatever, almost certainly they do. I mean, I quite often get notifications saying, you know, Fred Blogs, your new connection has just posted something. So I think they will know and they will see, oh, you've got some value whatsoever or value there. And so I think you can follow up with them reasonably quickly afterwards. You know, you maybe sending some more information, maybe asking for a chat or whatever, rather than immediately pitching to them. But I don't know how LinkedIn is there for people to make connections and do things with. So I think spending too long doing things is probably not worth it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I will stop recording just in case